Hello and welcome to Football New South Wales Extra Time podcast. My name is Gareth Long. It's day 2, lunchtime at, or nearly lunchtime, at Football New South Wales Coaching Conference. The sun has finally come out, so that's a beautiful day. I'm really honoured to be joined by Amy Price. Amy is the Women's National Coach Developer for England FA. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you.
We got a challenge, Amy. We've got 20 minutes to dig into a topic that I think me and you could talk about forever. So we're going to look at the craft of coaching and 3 key tips for realistic practice design. So you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's do it then. Okay, maybe we'll start by actually looking at what unrealistic practice design looks like from your perspective.
I always think about the laws of the game and the rules. So I'm thinking to unrealistic practice design for me is something that doesn't look like an invasion game. So there's maybe not an opportunity for players to invade, exploit territory. There wouldn't be a goal to defend or a goal to attack. And probably, like I said, about the laws of the game in terms of like using feet as well. It's football. Could probably add that one in. If it's with the older players as well, I think the offside law is massive. I even see it sometimes, we're at 11-a-side practice with like older players and the coach might have just taken that law out and it just doesn't look like the game because you have people goal hanging and it completely changes the dynamics. So, yeah, I would summarise that with our teams or individuals, whether it's small or large numbered, allowed to invade territory, and are they actually trying to score a goal? Are they actually trying to defend? Because that's the purpose of the game. And then, are they adhering to as many laws of the game as possible, such as using your feet and offsides?
Lovely. And sometimes this conversation often goes to, like, on one hand we've got repetition and then at the other end of the scale we've got realism. I think that's probably too simple, but how do you see it?
Yeah, I always think like you can't always get the perfect blend. Like if it was 100% realistic all the time, it's basically the full game, and then you like individual players are missing out on like actions with and without the ball. They're just not getting much of the ball, especially if it's 11-a-side. So I think the skill of coaching is maintaining as much like realism to the game as possible, so it's like logical and it makes sense and it looks like football, but then finding ways within your practice to afford moments of repetition in certain things that you want them to be doing. So, for example, big thing for me is setting the problem for the players to solve. So, can the coach actually create, if it's an attacking focus that you're going after, can the coach create a situation where there is, like I said, an opponent defending the goal and they're creating a problem to maybe break down the defence? Can you get lots of repetition of that moment? So it might mean that you have to take control of the practice sometimes. It might mean that you have to adapt the area size to get maybe more turnovers, for example. But you've got to know what you're going after, what you want them to learn from the practice, and then get the repetition of that as much as you can, whilst making sure it's logical.
Yeah, it's nice. You talk about the practice design, but you're already talking about the interventions you might need to make and the tweaks you might need to make for that as well. And I guess realism, when we talk about realism, we're saying that it should reflect the game that the players play. So does that start with deciding what to coach?
Yeah, exactly. So I think as a coach, when you're designing a practice, you've got to start with clarity in your own head, like I said, of what is it we're focusing on. So, for example, if I want to help my players to be better at, I don't know, finishing from crosses, then I have to think, well, there has to be, to make it realistic, I have to have a goalie defending the goal, some defenders to try and stop and defend the cross. I have to have my attackers. And then it's then thinking, I probably haven't got access to all the players. Like I haven't got like 22 players in my training session. So who isn't so important? Probably don't need the defenders on the attacking team, for example. And just having clarity, that's the moment I want. That's the moment I'm looking for in my practice. So can I try and get repetition of the moment of where the cross is coming in and the players are defending the cross or attacking the cross? So yeah, having clarity of the game problem that the players are aiming to solve, I think is essential when designing your practices.
Yeah, and I'd like to sort of ask a follow-up question on that, because I'll take your example of finishing from crosses. I guess, I don't know if it's a danger, but I'll use that word. The danger is that coaches can watch the elite level finishing from crosses. So have you got any advice on how coaches can take a tactical problem,
Yeah.
but ensure it's realistic to their players?
Again, I think you just got to keep it simple. Like, obviously at the highest level they'll be able to execute certain skills and movements that younger players can't do. So I think my advice would just be patient, keep it simple, be prepared that, especially with something like maybe it's crossing and finishing, like your players might not even be delivering like crosses that allow the finishers to finish because they're still developing. So I suppose try not to include too many rules and constraints in your practice. Try not to overcomplicate your instructions. Just keep it like the game. Is there some defenders defending the goal? Is there some attackers? Maybe make the space bigger. For example, if you wanted the attackers to have more success of actually being able to cross the ball, maybe overload the attacking team. Okay, you might say that's unrealistic in that phase. It probably is, but that might be, as a coach, something that you're okay with in that training session, because you just want the players to be able to have an opportunity to cross the ball without it getting stopped, or without like it getting intercepted. So everything's a trade-off. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the point that you made earlier around sometimes it's a compromise.
Definitely,
Coaching what
yeah.
you're going to get, what do you know you're not going to get, and be happy
100%.
with that and be intentional around that.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's a good thing for, I'll stick with the crossing and finishing, seeing as we've gone down there.
Yeah.
I guess it's a good thing for coaches to actually observe what it looks like in a game for their players. Like, where are the crosses coming from? How many players are typically around,
Yeah.
that box, and design the practice from there, I suppose.
I always think, like I like that phrase somebody's used before, the game leaves the clues. So watching the game that your players take part in every weekend, and like probably just appreciating the chaotic nature of like youth football, and just being okay with that in your practices. Basically, I think a lot of it is around, with practice design and stuff. It's being okay when it looks a bit of a mess, in terms of players not necessarily executing everything that you want them to do, and ball going off and having to start again, turnovers. Being okay with that. But just always coming back to, as long as you know what you're coaching and you've set up a realistic scenario as much as you can.
Lovely, Amy. Right, well, I reckon we're ready to lock in tip one. And tip one is for realistic practice design. Tip one is to set the tactical problem or tactical problems.
Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
All right, lovely. Okay, right. So I suppose when we talk about realism, often we talk about it being more towards the sort of random practice design. But I think as well, when we talk about realism, we sometimes look about, so when we have random design, lots of different things happen, obviously randomly. But I think we can sometimes plan for intentional variety as well. How do you do that?
Yeah. So like we were saying before, if you've got clarity in your mind of what it is you want your players to do, so i.e. what problems they're trying to solve, taking the crossing and finishing example again, it's probably like appreciating that, especially in that final third, there's in the actual game, in youth or senior football, like there's most in the final thirds, that's where there's a lot of pressure. That's where like there's going to be like probably a defensive overload, probably an attacking underload, like less time on the ball. So and it's like the business end of the pitch is going to be more high pressurized. So it'll be more like mistakes. Like there will be mistakes, and those mistakes lead to turnovers a lot of the time, or the ball going off the pitch, maybe for throws or corners. So when we talk about like variety, it's like appreciating that is an aspect of like variety that will happen if that's the part of the pitch that I'm working in. And rather than leaving it to chance all the time. Of like, oh, it will go off, or like it will go for a throw eventually, or whatever. Like, take control of it as a coach. Think about like, what could I manipulate in my practice in this part of the pitch to maybe get some like extra repetition of, say, throw-ins. Like for example, something I did recently was I just narrowed the pitch off slightly. So, and naturally, what that meant was the attackers had like less space. The defenders had less space. So when they won the ball back, for example, defenders had less space to attack. Then that would just like mean that the ball went off the pitch more. So then my attacking team would be able to take some attacking throws more often, and then that led to some goal scoring chances because that particular session was on combination play in the final third and trying to break down the defence. So that kind of worked in my favour by just narrowing the pitch off to get more throw-ins for my attacking team. And you can just like it's subtle like tweaks to your practices that can just like create more chance of something occurring, what you want it to occur. So like turnovers, for example, if you were maybe coaching, some coaches really want to support players in that final third. We're going to go down that theme again.
Yeah, stick with
attacking in
it.
the final third. They want to support players with like when you regain the ball in the final third, maybe from a press, like can you actually like keep the ball secure rather than giving it away straight away, for example, especially with kids, that's like a big thing. So let's say I was trying to coach that in the final third, then might be like really like it might be quite useful as a coach for me to try to manage that scenario in my practice. So I want to basically, I'm thinking now, how do I reverse engineer it? I want my attackers to get even more repetition in the final third of regaining the football. Okay, what could I do here to increase the chances of them regaining the football? Okay, I know. What I'm going to do is when I'm coaching, I'm going to have two balls under my arm, and I don't know, every now and then, or I don't know, maybe instead of every now and then, I might just like serve the ball into one of the defensive players, but make it a dodgy serve. So I'm going to give them a dodgy serve, a dodgy restart in the game, in any given moment, knowing that there's an attacker quite close by. That attacker's then going to like hopefully be able to regain the ball because I've like dodgy served it into the defender.
Good
And then
excuse.
straight away we've got the moment that I need, and then I can coach that moment. So I suppose it's like you're not passive in the process. It's not just the game is the teacher. Oh, I've just put on this game and we're working on combination play in the final third or attacking transitions in the final third and it'll just happen. Like, no, we've set the problem, great, we've got the right numbers in the right area, we've like got a decent challenge level for both teams, fine. It's not just gonna do the magic. Like, you've got to add in a little bit like of manipulation to how you work it so that you get players more exposure to the things that you want them to, but still keeping that variety in the practice as well, so it's not like monotonous and too repetitive.
I love it, Amy, because it points to the coaching expertise that the coach can have real impact on the practice design. And also, it's kind of, I see it like the practice like a sponge, and we're trying to squeeze every opportunity out of it. And I love, again, I'm guilty of this. Is that I might be on the halfway line, I feed the ball in, and it's repetition of the same thing, rather than that sort of repetition without repetition. So varying those possession starts, I think that's a really nice point that every single coach can take away.
And it's really simple to implement. So, for example, another one I was experimenting with was, let's say again we're going with that attacking third theme. Let's say we like the attacking team won a corner. Typically, especially in youth football, like they'll take the corner and nothing comes of it, and like the game just carries on. Yeah. But actually, like what I've been starting to do with the team that I coach is just say to the players right at the start of the practice, if the attacking team get a corner in this practice, we're going to give them 3 turns. So yeah, they've earned the corner, brilliant. I deliver it. Let's say I don't know, it gets cleared. Like that phase of the game is over. The whistle goes, they take it again. And then same, take it again. So that's quite cool because one, the attackers are buzzing because they're like, oh yeah, like get to either change my corner up.
Yeah.
Do I do the same corner 3 times, or do I do like maybe an in swinger or an out swinger or a short corner, like mix it? And then it's good for talk about the team that are setting the tactical problem, in this case the defence. It's good for them to be able to get repetition of like defending the corner as well, and like being able to adapt or reflect on how they might deal with it, rather than just waiting. Like if it's just one corner, might not be another one for like 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and then that might just be ballsed up or like be completely, yeah, it could be a worldie. We don't know. So yeah, just giving them a bit more, like you say, varied repetition.
Lovely. Well, look, we're definitely ready to lock in tip 2 for tips for realistic practice design. And I'm going to, you spoke a lot more than this, but I'm just going to say tip 2 is vary possession starts.
Nice.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, what I like about this conversation is it's showing the, like I said, the expertise of the coach, but the myriad of options a coach has got, in their toolbox. And one of the things that I think sometimes coaches, perhaps sometimes we just do things as coaches and don't really interrogate why we do it. And I think one I've been wrestling with myself a lot lately is the use of rewards versus restraints. So again, and people will think we planned this crossing finishing, but we didn't. But there we might go that you must finish first time, that being a restraint, or we might say a first time finish is worth 2 goals would be a classic way of doing it. Do you have a preference, a view at all on rewards versus restrictions? I know that it's not going to be one is right, one is wrong.
No. I think I've definitely explored the use of like rewards and restrictions in my practice design, but at the moment I'm in the bit of the mindset of like, I always in my head like football goals are worth 1. It's not basketball, so I find it difficult when there's a practice and it's like if you do this it's worth 3, and I'm thinking coming back to the start of realism.
Yeah, interesting.
That's not really real, because it is worth 1. So but at the same time, don't get me wrong, I have used that before, and with certain groups of players in certain contexts, it's very motivating for the players and really engages them. So again, comes back to probably what your players are like and your context that you're working in. With the restrictions, I think you've got to be really careful using restrictions as a coach. So like you said there, 1 touch finish, or it's got to be 2 touch, or this and that, because we can overdo that sometimes as coaches, giving players too many restrictions, because we're so obsessed with what we're trying to coach and what we want to get out of it, that the decision making of the player and the freedom for the player and the ability to read the game and solve the problem, and it just goes out the window. And it's like it's basically the coach trying to control the actions of the players too much. And look, I've been there. I've probably in the past delivered practices with way too many restrictions, and you can see it in players if you actually look at the players' body language and reactions, and they're a bit like, oh, what? I'm only on 1 touch. So yeah, I think we've got to be really careful with why we're using a restriction, and for how long, for what purpose. Does the player understand the potential benefits and your thinking behind it? Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's the intent behind it, isn't it? Are you trying to increase some repetition by mandating it, or are you taking away some realism? I love that sort of detail of coaches explaining why they're doing what they're doing, and being able to explain why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, look, let me move. So I'm moving on now. Like I think the majority of coaches will want to design realistic practices.
Yeah.
Practices, games, whatever. I think most coaches would want to do that.
Yeah.
But what challenges do you see for coaches who are on that path of striving to design realistic practices? What are some of the challenges they face?
Well, as a coach developer, I go into different like clubs quite often to observe coaching, and one of the first lenses or things that I look at when I'm in sessions is the engagement of the players, and I look at what practice have they been asked to take part in, and are they brought into the practice? Are they engaged and motivated in this practice? And I think a challenge for coaches, no matter what level you're working at, is all players, whether they're young, old, experienced or not experienced, they're human. So sometimes you get the smart one in the group, whose mind is wired, like all humans, to try and cheat the practice and find like a way of like winning the practice without like participating fully in the practice. And what I mean by that is the classic example that somebody who I work with, I've known for a while, tells me when he was coaching at a professional club with a professional player. It was his first session, and he put on a small-sided game, 4v4, with target goals on each side. And one team, they went and scored a goal, 1-0. And then after that, that team just stood in front of the target goal. And all four of them just standing there. And the coach, this is senior professional players, and the coach said, "You can't do that." And the player said, "Why not?" And he went, "Well, you can't. It's not. Then you're not playing the game properly." And he said, "I can do what I want. We're winning. Why am I going to try and go after the ball when we're winning 1-0? I'm just going to stand here and block the goal." So I thought that was, I've always remembered that story, because I'm like, wow, like fair play to the players who blocked the goal, because they're correct. Coming back to the full circle of this podcast, the tactic, it's football's about setting and solving problems. They've basically created a problem for their opponent that the game is allowing them to do because of the way it has been designed. So they're actually being intelligent, and they're managing the game, and they're being smart by setting problems for the opponent. And as the coach in that moment, you can't just say you can't do that, because you can. So it made me think a lot about, like, when you're planning your practices, you've got to put yourself in the shoes of the players, and think, if I was in this practice and I was being smart, what would I do to win it? I call it to win the practice, or to break the practice, or to find the loopholes. It means the same thing. And really work through that in your design. It's like a pressure testing it, or like, I don't know, just making sure that it can't get broken when you get out there. Because when you get out there, it's much harder to fix it.
Yeah, if you haven't planned the fix.
Everyone's watching you like, oh, shoot, I haven't even thought of that. And then you've got to think of something in the moment. And if you can't think of something, you say you can't do that. And that's not a good enough reason. And then you lose the engagement from the players. So thinking that through as much as possible in your practice in the first instance is fundamental to make sure that the practices are realistic and getting out what you want them to.
A player doing that is a great test of the realism of your practice, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's nice to know professional players do the same as the lads I coach. So that's
humans.
That's great to know.
Humans. They just want to succeed. They want to win. They want to be clever and find a way. I've got probably 3 or 4 stories of different practices that. So coming back to that 3v3, I asked the guy. I said, "So, what? Like, if you were to repeat that again, what would you have done to stop them from breaking it?" And he said, "Yeah, simple. I'd have just moved the target goals like 10 yards behind the line on each side, so they can't just stand there."
Yeah.
And then like there'd be like angles and spaces for the opposition to actually slide in. Even if the defenders did defend low, they still wouldn't just be able to stand on the goal line.
I'm glad you gave us the solution.
Well, that's just one solution, but yeah, I thought that was quite good. I saw another one. If I've got time,
look. I'll let everyone into a secret. I forgot to start the timer for this anyway, so I don't know if we're meeting our challenge for 20 minutes anyway. So we have got 3 minutes, I reckon, Amy.
I saw another one the other day with it was an 8 versus 6, and there's no offsides in this practice. Even though coming back, the children,
offside was a law that they
should have had offside, but they didn't in this game. No offsides, 8 versus 6, and on each side of the practice. So basically, the 6 are defending 2 target goals that are sort of, I don't know, 10, 12 yards apart. And I was watching it and I was thinking, God, that team of 6 who are up against an 8, defending 2 split target goals, and there's no offsides, they're working really hard. they're still pressing, they're still getting after it, they're running all over the place. And I thought they're very compliant, they're very honest. And halfway through the practice, the coach, who's actually an ex-player, very high-level ex-player, midfield player, I said, out of interest, if you were on that 6, and you were in the session as a player, how would you defend? And they said, just pressing and marking, all the normal stuff. And I said, really? Would you not just stand in front of the goals, just drop? And they were like, no. I was like, I'm really surprised your players aren't cheating it here. And then the coach was like, yeah, no, it's because then they wouldn't be being honest to the practice. We want them to run around and press. And I was like, got to be careful there, because, okay, you've got away with that in this context because the players are very compliant and they don't want to upset the coach. But again, like, you could go to another environment and your practice is done. Like, how can a 6 defend against an 8 with 2 split target goals and there's no offsides? Like, that's a tough ask in quite a big space as well. So, sometimes the players let the coaches get away with it. But despite whether your group are like compliant or non-compliant, as a coach, I always think it's good to go through that process.
Yeah, lovely. Look, Amy, I'm going to lock in the third and final tip for realistic practice design. And I think it's worded this way: think about how your practice could be broken.
Yes, I like that, yeah.
All right, lovely. Well, let's summarise the 3 key tips for realistic practice design. And I could talk about this all day, but we've probably gone over 20 minutes. But tip 1, set the tactical problem or problems. Be very clear on that. Tip 2, vary the possession starts, which may be incidental ones or ones by design. And then the third thing, get in the player's mind, particularly your creative players, we'll call them, and think about how your practice could be broken.
Cool. Yeah. All good.
Amy, thank you so much. Really
Thanks,
enjoyed
Gareth.
that. Thank you.
Cheers.